Hey guys, hey, it's Anne Marie, the anti-HR lady. And I thought I'd just take a minute while I'm here doing some prep for my dinner tonight to talk to you guys about a issue. I've been thinking about it a lot, but I've been debating about whether I would say anything about it because in a way, I guess I will be doing what my good sister Tammy at Style File calls touching the third rail. But recently, I was chatting with a former client. I had helped her exit a discriminatory hostile workplace, and they paid her good coin. So she had decided to take some time off. She didn't work for several months. She wanted to take her time to find a new job, and she did. And I get a message from her saying she wanted to chat with me about her experience at her new job. So right away, I knew, uh-oh. And when she got on the phone with me, she told me basically that she had taken a job at an organization. Her direct manager was a Black woman, so she had been very excited, thinking that this was going to be a great experience, good opportunity. And to make a long story short, the workplace turned out to be extremely hostile and toxic. And she decided within, I think it was under 12 weeks, under 3 months, to get out of there. And she told me a lot of what she learned working with me caused her to immediately take stock of the workplace and make the decision to get out of there when she understood what kind of work environment she was in, rather than hanging out, trying to change it, doing the things a lot of us as Black women usually do. She decided to get the hell out of Dodge, but she was telling me how disappointed she was because, she had been so excited about working with a white woman. And one of the things I told her was, working with a Black woman, I'm sorry. One of the things I told her was, the only difference between working sometimes with Black women and white women is that they will create very difficult and often hostile and toxic work environments for you, but often you can't be sure whether it's because you're Black, even though oftentimes, in fact, it is. But that's not why I wanted to talk about this. It got me to thinking, and as she and I were talking, it got me to thinking more about the ways in which I have experienced, discrimination and hostility and toxicity in the workplaces that I've been in before I bought my freedom from my employer with a big check. And what had occurred to me was, and this, I'm not at all saying this to say this is the case for everyone, but in every single situation where I had a difficult work environment to navigate, my supervisors were women. Primarily white women. White women have been the worst in my personal career trajectory to work with. They have been the most racist, the most passive aggressive, the most created the worst and most hostile and toxic work environments. And the alternate to that is the most pleasant, progressive environments where I got to grow in my career, got rewarded for my performance, did not deal with a lot of microaggressions and over emotions and all these kinds of things, emotional people, acting out of emotion and creating difficult situations for me to work through, were led by men. The best work environment I ever had personally, I worked with a Black male for 8 years. Hands down the best supervisor, best manager, best leader I ever worked for and ever witnessed. And I was lucky to work with him early in my career because I learned a lot from him and I modeled my management style and my leadership style in many respects, not in all of them, because he had a way better temperament than I ever did. After him. And I always took it as a compliment when people told me that they felt I led more like a man than a woman, even though I was like, well, what does that mean? But I came to learn that they meant that I didn't lead with emotion. I led with logic. I did not lead with, if we're not personal friends, or if you don't talk to me about your personal business at work, then we're enemies. I didn't gossip at work. I didn't pit the people who worked for me against each other. These are all things that I experienced working with women, right? I worked at an organization that was a woman-led organization that if I said the name of the organization, everyone would recognize it. It was horrible. And it was a woman-led organization with a mission for serving women and reproductive rights. It was horrible, one of the worst ever. I used to call the leader of the organization, who has since been retired from her role, the handmaiden of the devil. That's how bad it was, right? I've never had that experience dealing with men, whether white men or black men. Now, I'm not saying white men are not racist, because I've witnessed racism and I've dealt with racism, but the intensity and, that I dealt with women, especially white women, hands down the worst. And black women were in a close second place, right? So as women, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. I found that men were willing to listen to me more as a leader. Men were willing to promote me and to judge me on my performance, not on their emotional feelings about me, right? And if they had emotional feelings, I wasn't aware of them. But with women, it was always this kind of, cliquey atmosphere that a lot of them create. Actually, all of them I ever worked with would create these cliques, and someone is in and someone is out. And the people who are out would get, treated differently than the people who are in, whether they were in based on race or personal relationship or whatever it was. It was always like personalized treatment. And I always pushed against that, because I've never believed in judging people at work on anything other than their performance and how they do their jobs and their ability to execute and deliver. And so working with women, I found to be very difficult. And so what I said to this person is, don't think that just because you walk into an interview and your leader is going to be a woman or even a woman of color, that you're necessarily going to have a good experience. Because I have lots and lots of clients that come to me, and the majority of my clients that come to me that are in discriminatory, hostile, toxic workplaces are working under women. Either black women, other women of color, but primarily white women. Extremely difficult work environments. Not saying that they're not men, because the men are representing, especially the white men, right? And in some work environments, they're black men, especially in HR, who are, pushing the white supremacy agenda along with everybody else. But when people talk about being in difficult, hostile, like actively hostile, toxic, actively discriminatory workplaces, I'm telling y'all, 8 times out of 10, the leaders are women. And so we've got to examine ourselves about why that is. But for those of you in workplaces, especially black women, I would love to hear in your comments what your experience has been, right? Whether it mirrors mine or it's different. And I'm willing to, I'm open to the idea that this is not everyone's experience. But this has been my experience. And as I've been talking to clients, I am finding that it is their experience as well. So what it says to me is we have a lot of work to do as women in workplaces to be better managers and better leaders. This idea that women are better managers and leaders, I've never bought into it because I never experienced it. So I would really, really like us to be honest with ourselves about how we are leading and how we treat each other as women in the workplace, because I've also witnessed women treat men differently, give men a lot more leeway than they gave other women. And I've seen white women and women of color and black women do that, right? So we have a lot of work to do, and we need to get at about the business of working on those things. And yes, all roads lead to white supremacy. I have a theory that the reason that a lot of white men didn't give me a hard time in the workplace, besides the fact that I was competent as fuck and knew what I was doing, was I don't think they necessarily saw me as a threat, because they're white and they're male, right? They didn't see me as a threat. They didn't see me as someone to be worried about until they needed to be, right? Till I was already promoted over them or something like that. But they didn't think of me coming through the door in that way. And I feel that white women feel very competitive of black women. They feel that we're supposed to be below them and stay below them, even when we're better trained, better educated, have more experience than them. And they have a really difficult time seeing and respecting us in positions of authority. And I can honestly say, I've managed white men, I've managed white women, I've managed every type of person, sexual orientation, disability, people on the spectrum, etc. The most problematic people to manage in my experience have been white women. Far and away have been white women, right? I just did not have those experiences, even with men. I remember the last job I had, I managed a guy who was, I swear, if you looked up alpha in the dictionary, his picture would be there, okay? Ex-military, the whole nine. But he knew how to be led and how to be managed. And when I left, he told me I was one of the best managers and leaders he'd ever seen and one of the best managers he'd ever had, right? I never had him push back or try to challenge my authority or try to undermine me or go behind my back or any of those things. But I had other women on my team who worked for me, primarily white women and black women, try to do that. So I really feel like we need to examine ourselves as women about how we relate to each other, how we treat each other, and we have got to do better. We have to recognize what the root of these things are, and it is anti-Blackness, whiteness, and white supremacy, and we got to get about the business of fixing it because we are making life really, really difficult for each other. I will see you guys in the next video. I am Anne-Marie, the anti-HR lady. I teach my clients how to get out of discriminatory hostile workplaces with their bag. And as I always tell you, HR is not your enemy, but they're definitely not your friend. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.